Hi, I'm Dustin Abbott, and I'm here to give you a quick video review today of the new Canon 50mm f1.8 STM lens. Now, if you haven't already viewed it, I've already done a couple of videos that detail both the build quality of this lens and give you a look at that, along with another video that gives you a look at the actual aperture and how it breaks down compared to the older 50mm f1.8 Mark II lens. And so if you want to take a moment and watch both those videos, the links will be right here. And we'll wait a second for you to get caught up, and then we'll move on. Now, Canon has made a number of very key improvements to what was perhaps one of the most popular lenses in the world. The 50mm f1.8 has long been a very popular lens, going back to the earliest version of this lens, the Mark I, where it had a bit better build quality, metal construction, metal mount. In between, we had the 50mm f1.8 Mark II lens, which unfortunately was a step back in build quality, plastic mount, and overall cheap feeling construction. It lost the distance window and focus window and became known as the Plastic Fantastic. It's remained popular though for a number of important reasons. Number one, the image quality is quite good for the price point, and the second reason is that price point, which at, in the United States, $125, makes it really just about the cheapest lens available for Canon, but one that provides image quality that hits way above its price point. The problems with this lens were numerous. Number one, that build quality is often be referred to as a throwaway build quality. It just didn't stand up very well. It's very cheap. It feels like a toy. And so as a result, they tended to get broken, and I call it throwaway build quality because rather than repairing it, people would just toss it and buy a new one. It also suffered from a loud, buzzy focus motor that, while not necessarily super slow, it was terrible for if you wanted to do any kind of video recording and it focused. And then also it had a little tiny manual focus ring at the front that is very hard to grip because it's so small, and it's also just the whole thing feels kind of scratchy in operation. And then the final kind of major issue with the lens beyond that was the fact that it had a very dated design for its aperture iris with only 5 blades, and they were straight blades. As a result, even by f2.8, you could already see clearly defined pentagonal shapes, and to me, the look of out-of-focus highlights became cartoonish very quickly. Canon has addressed basically all of those issues in this new version, the STM version. Number one, it has addressed the build quality that while it's not a metal construction, it is up to the standard of modern lenses, and it's got that engineered plastic to where the lens itself feels more robust, and also it has a density. It's still a very light and small lens. In fact, it is a few millimeters shorter than what the previous lens was, and so mounted on a body, it's not a pancake lens, not quite like Canon's, for example, 40mm pancake, but compared, it's not a whole lot bigger, and as a result, it's very easy to bring along. But at the same time, it feels denser and better made. Somewhat surprisingly, the front filter thread has shrunk from 52mm on the older lens to a 49mm filter thread, which is kind of a throwback size to some of the film era lenses of yesterday. But anyway, overall, it's a nicely constructed lens, particularly, again, and I'm going to beat this drum a few times, that the price has remained the exact same. Secondly, as we examined in that other video, Canon has dealt with the aperture issue by changing the aperture iris design to a 7 curved blade aperture. As a result, you can go all the way through f5.6 before you start to see the design of the blades, and even still, it is still more of a circular shape. And so as a result, you're not going to get that cartoonish look. And so bokeh is going to look a little bit smoother in some situations when stopped down. On top of that, Canon has also addressed the overall focus issue with the addition of the STM focus. STM, for me personally, is a bit of a two-edged sword. While it is undoubtedly an upgrade over the old buzzy micro motors, it it's a very different style of focus, and as a result, it does enable full-time manual override, but in a different sense than what you're accustomed to with, you know, either Canon's USM or Sigma's HSM or Tamron's USD type focus motors, where when you're manually overriding, you're directly affecting the movement of the lens elements. With STM, all STM lenses, not just this one, but with all STM lenses, there is never a moment where the focus is decoupled from the autofocus motor. So what that means is even when you are autofocusing, when you're manually focusing, manual focus only occurs by taking the input you're providing here and sending that through the focus motor, rather than you know, under normal autofocus, it would simply be taking those same kind of cues from the camera body. And so there's a couple of drawbacks to that. First of all, you can forget trying to pre-focus. There's no distance window. In fact, on no STM window is there any kind of distance window. And furthermore, if the camera is not powered on, and there's no power to the lens, because there is no direct coupling to the elements when you manually focus, it means that you can spin this ring all day long and it won't do anything. Because unless the camera's powered on and that focus motor is active, it won't actually move the lens elements forwards or backwards. And so as a result, for manually focusing, it's far from being a dream. The advantage of STM, which stands for stepping motor, is that particularly when you're using, if you're using servo mode in video capture, which a few Canon bodies do support. I'm filming right now on one of those bodies, which is a Canon 70D. During that, the focus is going to be nice and smooth with a stepping motor. And so if you transition, it will automatically focus without a lot of noise. But most importantly is the manner in which it focuses. It will focus more smoothly from one extreme to another, rather than an abrupt, jerky type focus. It focuses on being smooth. And so that means if you're trying to do a pull focus, for example, if you're focused on something in the foreground and you want to move towards a background object or vice versa, it will make that transition in a smoother fashion. And of course, that carries over to autofocus in general. It focuses in a smoother fashion than what the old buzzy micromotor did. Is it faster? I don't actually think it is any faster in terms of focus, and neither is this the fastest application of STM that I've ever seen before. For that matter, it's also one of the louder applications of STM. But still, when you compare them side by side, it's a definite improvement. And I think also I have noticed an improvement in autofocus accuracy. I will note that it took some work for me to get this lens kind of dialed into my bodies. It required a fairly significant AFMA adjustment, more so in fact than what the old lens did. But the good news is I found that once I got that AFMA dialed in, my autofocus results were very accurate. I would encourage you, if you don't have a body that supports AFMA micro adjustment, or you don't know how to do that, to send the camera and this new lens, if you find that it's not focusing accurately, send it to Canon and let them calibrate it for your specific body. It might cost you a little bit of money, but it will pay off in the lack of headaches. It will provide you much more consistent results, sharper results, simply because it will be in focus more often. Now, the big question is this lens an optical improvement? The answer is yes and no. No, in the sense that this isn't really a new optical formula in this lens. Canon has essentially recycled the old optical formula, but in the process they have tweaked it, optimized it a little bit. And so that shows up in a few key areas. Number one, you will find that the minimum focus distance is reduced on the new lens. The old lens could focus down to about 1.5 feet or 0.45 meters. That gave it a maximum magnification of a very pedestrian 0.15 times. the new lens. It will focus down to 1.1 feet or about 0.35 meters, which bumps up that maximum magnification figure to 0.21 times. So that's certainly an improvement and allows you to fill the frame a bit more. Throw an extension tube on this lens and you're getting into near macro territory. Although just understand that extension tubes do have their own kinds of limitations. But still, it's an extra value on what is already a great value lens. And so that's an improvement. Also, Canon has improved the coatings that are on this lens. So as a result, it exhibits less chromatic aberrations. In fact, chromatic aberrations are quite well controlled. And only in very rare specific occasions have I seen them at all. And this is before there's a standard lens profile for this lens that's out for any kinds of software. And so I am not making any kind of correction for chromatic aberration, but I'm not hardly noticing it all in field use. And so that's certainly an improvement. On top of that, I do think that contrast is a little bit better, and there have been a few specific instances that show that to me, a little less haze in certain settings. And then also it has improved flare resistance. And so if you're shooting into the sun, while there is still a few ghosting artifacts, it is much better controlled than what the old lens was. And so some key updates that while it's not a new or radically different optical formula, there are some key improvements over what was already quite good image quality. Is it worth a buy? If you're looking for a cheap prime, this is probably the best value bargain on the planet right now. And it certainly is a big improvement over the old lens at no additional cost. Should you upgrade from this lens if you have it? Well, if you're wanting to upgrade just for optical improvement, I don't know. But if there are some of these other improvements that are important to you, the focus motor accuracy or that aperture redesign, then it's most certainly worth an upgrade. In fact, I fully anticipate used markets getting flooded with the Mark II of this old lens. Some alternatives to consider is Canon's own Pancake. It's a 40mm f2.8, and while it doesn't have as wide an aperture as the f1.8 on the 50mm lens, this is still a bit higher in terms of its overall construction, and it also has a slightly higher maximum magnification, and I think it's a little bit sharper at that minimum focus range. And it's perfectly sharp from f2.8. It's amazing optics for the price point there, and of course it's super small and super portable. 40mm is a bit of a no man's land in terms of traditional focal lengths, falling between 35 and 50mm, but you might find that it is a perfect focal length for you. If you're not afraid of manual focus, another lens to consider that will cost you roughly the same is an old SMC Tacumar 50mm f1.4. I use this lens a lot because it has great image quality with a lot of character. It's beautifully constructed. Only Zeiss is making lenses that are anything like this anymore. And so it's beautifully constructed. And it's also, as you can see, it's very compact. And so it's easy to bring along. It's heavier because it's more dense. It's made out of metal. But if you don't mind manual focusing, it focuses beautifully and produces some really stunning images that to me are a cut above what I can produce with this lens, right down to the bokeh quality, which I think is smoother and creamier from this lens, not to mention that you can open the aperture all the way up to f1.4. And by f2, this lens is actually a little bit sharper in the middle compared to the 50mm f1.8, although 50mm f1.8 is a little bit sharper out towards the edges. Also by f2, this has a little bit vignetting, and that's something that's still fairly heavy on the 50mm f1.8. The holy grail for me that I'm still waiting for Canon to build is an equivalent of this wonderful 35mm f2 IS lens from Canon. I love this prime lens, and there's really nothing about it that I can criticize. I think it's a fantastic lens, and I think Canon is very capable of building perhaps a replacement for the 50mm f1.4 that's going to offer kind of a similar quality to this, with a really fast, accurate USM motor. Image stabilizing would be awesome, but perfect sharpness wide open. This lens is amazingly sharp wide open, and it really is a joy to use. It also has beautiful drawing, better bokeh than really almost any of the 50mm options from Canon. And so I can't wait for Canon to build something that's roughly this size. Yes, it's larger, but it's still not huge, a lot smaller than, for example, the Sigma 35mm f1.4 or Canon's own 35 f1.4L. I think Canon can build a lens like this that to me is going to be the 50mm lens that I've been looking for. But in the meantime, for 125 bucks, this is a lot of lens, and it's going to make a lot of people very happy. If you haven't already, please subscribe. And if you would also do me a favor, if you're interested in purchasing any of these lenses that I've mentioned, there's going to be linkage down below. And it's people that purchase through those links. It costs you nothing, but it helps to fund my doing these websites, or this website, and also these YouTube reviews. And so if you would be so kind as to do that, I would greatly appreciate it. I'm Dustin Abbott. Have a great day.